Okay, it's 10 on my computer, so I'm just going to pass the baton to our board chair, Joe, to welcome us all to the meeting.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Joe Davies. I'm the chair of the WiLS Board of Directors for 2021 and 2022, and it is my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the entire WiLS board and staff to our annual member meeting. This annual meeting provides a venue for us to update you on what WiLS is doing behind the scenes to support the diverse needs of our members. And more importantly, it's a time to shine a light on the work of our members, what they're doing in the community with us and in community with one another. Today, we're going to hear first from fellow members about their experiences with communities of practice. And these are stories of getting stuff done. But they are more than just creating elaborate shared to-do lists. They are building spaces where ideas are shared and solutions simmer and opportunities develop. And as you may have noticed in our recently released 2021 annual report, the coming year marks 50 years of WiLS. Yay! And over the past half a century, the faces and features of WiLS have evolved and changed. But what has remained steadfast is our commitment to our belief in our members and the life-changing work that you do. At the conclusion of our meeting today, Jennifer will share a sneak peek at what's in store for celebrating this milestone. And so with that, let's get started. I'm going to turn things over to our executive director, Jennifer Chamberlain, for some introductions. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks a lot, Joe. Well, good morning, everyone. I am so glad to have you all here today, or if you're listening on the recording, we're glad that you joined us however it worked for you. We are keenly aware of the many demands on your time. And so having you spend your Friday morning with us is so incredibly special. The last Friday in February has just sort of become our tradition for our annual meeting, and it is a favorite day for the WiLS staff. We've had a lot of excitement already in the virtual office, and so we're happy to have this opportunity to share with all of you and to hear from many of you on the past year of celebrations and challenges in libraries and cultural organizations across the state. Many of you know that WiLS is governed by a 13-member board of directors that are elected or appointed to represent the diverse voices among our WiLS membership. So you see on your screen the 13 lucky folks that we get to spend time with, and each member you see listed here commits to a 3-year term. They offer advice on new service development. They keep a watchful eye on our financial operations. They help us think strategically and encourage us to be responsive to the changing needs of our member community. Most importantly, they volunteer their precious time to help WiLS be the best it can be. On behalf of the WiLS staff and member community, I'd like to offer a big thank you to all of our board members for sharing their expertise and energy with us. I'm also happy to introduce to you the mission-driven staff of WiLS, and you can see their smiling faces here on the screen. These are the folks that many of you probably have a personal connection with. You probably know at least one WiLSian, and you know them as close colleagues who go to bat for you every day, whether it be digging into data during a strategic planning process or negotiating on your behalf to get you the best price on a subscription service. Recently, we held a few listening sessions with some members, and time and again, we heard the description of individuals, our members' relationship with WiLS, really being about the relationships with these people. You are looking at a team of individuals who really love what they do and enjoy partnering with you, our members, because we believe so strongly in the work that you do. So I'd like to call out the newest member of our team. You see him at the bottom of the screen there, and maybe Nick, if you're comfortable, you can turn on your video. If not, that's okay. There we go. Hey, Nick. Nick joined us in May as a member of the admin team and cooperative purchasing team. You may have already connected with Nick on product pricing or renewals or billing information or just questions in general. It's as if Duck could have seen the script here, because he's also the proud owner of 2 adorable cats named Duck and Beacon, although I guess I don't know if that was Duck or Beacon. Which one is that?
This one is Duck.
Okay. Duck usually seems to be the one that hangs around. He makes regular appearances in our staff meetings. Staff pets are an important addition to our WiLS team. So welcome, Nick and family. So now that you've had a chance to see who's working on your behalf at WiLS, I'd like to turn over the first part of our meeting to hearing from some of our members, from you. As Joe mentioned, today's theme is communities of practice. So what do we mean when we say communities of practice? There's a definition that I think we'll put on the screen in a second here. Authors Wagner, McDermott, and Snyder define a community of practice as this: a group of people who share a common concern, a set of problems, or passion about a topic, and they deepen their knowledge and expertise in this area by interacting on an ongoing basis. So we've invited several members to share their own experiences with their unique communities of practice and how these networks help them get their work done. If you have questions during this first half of our meeting, please toss questions in the chat. I'll try to keep an eye on those. We hope that we'll have a moment between each presenter for them to respond to a few of those questions. We'll try to get to as many as we can. If not, we'll make sure the presenters loop back with you after today's meeting. So first off, I'm going to turn things over to Kathy Tuttrup, Public Services Manager of Brookfield Public Library, who will be sharing information on the Wild Plum Memory Project, which also happens to be a 2021 WiLS Ideas to Action Award winner. Kathy?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm very happy to talk about our Wild Plum Memory Project and our Memory Cafe. As Jennifer said, I am the Public Services Manager at the Brookfield Public Library, and we are a member of the Bridges Library System. Today, I'm going to talk about what are memory cafes and why are we called Wild Plum? How did the pandemic affect our cafe? And how did we use the IDEA grant to continue to grow our cafe? So what exactly is a memory cafe? A memory cafe is a social gathering for those who are experiencing early stage dementia, mild memory loss, or mild cognitive impairment, and for their families, friends, and partners. So it's a memory cafe, a place to have fun, share experiences, and stay socially connected. So in general, it's an adult program for people with memory loss and early stage dementia. So that's what we're doing. We're having these memory cafes, and we've been having these for a long time. So let's go. Okay, so Wild Plum, we started in 2018, and we had 4 libraries. It was our library, Brookfield, Elm Grove, Germantown, and Menominee Falls. So this was a great partnership, a great community, because not only did this cross systems, it crossed counties. And then we added the Sussex Library in 2019, the Pauline Haas Library. The why we joined together was none of us really wanted to do a program monthly on our own. So how we do it is each month, a different library hosts the program. And then the different librarians attend the programs at the different libraries to kind of keep that continuity so people get to know us. So we visit the different libraries and the programs rotate around. So we get people from all different communities traveling to the 5 different libraries throughout. And why did we choose Wild Plum? Well, one of the important things that we do at every meeting that we have is we have a closing. And you may say, is the closing really that important? And it is. We forgot to do it one time. And we started to leave and we started to pack up and say goodbye. And someone said, you didn't do our closing. And we got out our closing and we said it. So every meeting before we close, we read this together as a group. And we say, before we part, we want to remind you of the inspiration for the name of our group. The wild plum tree symbolizes endurance and vitality because the tree produces fruit late in the growing season. May we all appreciate and celebrate the human spirit and live life to the fullest. And then we thank everyone for being here. And this is just a celebration of life, especially for people going through these changes with memory loss, with dementia, and it gives hope to the people, their caregivers as well. So that's how we came up with the Wild Plum name, and we've just kept that name for our group. So what do you do at a memory cafe? These are just a selection of some of the photos, so I will explain what some of these things are. In the upper left is a flower arranging, and yes, I will admit this is one that I did, and I am not a crafty person, I will admit that, but I did do this one, and so it was I think quite nice, and so we did that with our group, and so that was flower arranging, quite popular. The next slide, the first one, is we did cut fruit, and we painted with cut fruit and cut vegetables. And in the lower corner where the woman is holding up the towel, the kitchen towel that says Wild Plum, she made that all on her own. We did not ask her to advertise our group. She made the Wild Plum all on her own. And that is done with the cut fruit and painted with cut fruit and cut vegetables. And then they get to take the kitchen towels home. The second one on the top is kind of typical of what we do. Is we usually have an icebreaker question to get everyone talking and remembering something and talking about a memory from childhood or from something that they remember from their past. And this one was especially nice. This was a recent one, post-pandemic. We were talking about winter, and two people in the group realized they'd grown up about 2 blocks away from each other, had gone to the same grade school, same middle school, and same high school, about three years apart in the same neighborhood. And so they made that connection at our memory cafe. And so they made that community connection, and we helped them make that connection. So we were talking about winter, and we were talking about things to do in winter, and then we made big snowflakes. So that was what we did there. The gentleman smiling, we had an education one. We brought pictures from old school days. We had a drum circle, and in the bottom left, we made holiday lights. And singing is always very popular. So we had a sing-along, and people always like to sing and sing some of the oldies. We had a sing-along, and then we also had the Trinity Irish Dancers. So memory cafes can be any program, anything that that brings people together and that they can do together. And then, of course, the pandemic. So let's go to the next slide. What did we do during the pandemic? Well, for a while we didn't do anything because we were kind of separated and we didn't know what to do. So the first thing we did, a lot of us were working from home. So we started to send monthly emails to the people that we had on our list. And that was just to keep in touch with our attendees. This was an especially vulnerable population. They were the caregivers, and their people were stuck at home and they couldn't get out. And so we started to send them emails with links to various topics and fun things to view, like zoos and armchair travel topics. So we would pick a topic and we would say, this is a great zoo to visit. This is a great museum to visit. And we would send them the links. And we would send them those monthly and just say, we're thinking of you. We can't wait to get back together and visit these links. And we sent those to our people monthly with our names and that type of thing. And then that wasn't enough. So we started handwriting letters to people, and we sent them to them for the people that we had addresses to. So we handwrote letters, and we just to give a more personal touch. And we talked about, you know, the birds are building nests, or it's snowing again, or we're shoveling again, or whatever we could see out our window, and, you know, ask rhetorical questions. What can you see? Have you seen your first robin yet? That type of thing. And just, again, just reiterating, we were looking forward to seeing them. We couldn't wait to get back together, and that type of thing. Just letting them know we were thinking of them and they were foremost on our minds. And then, of course, we were able to all go via Zoom because that became a thing. And then we started doing our online cafes. And the community part came in because there wasn't just Wild Plum. There were cafes that were meeting all across Waukesha County. And we all got together and we had all of our people get together and we met via Zoom with all the members of the Library Memory Project. And there's a picture of that, all of us together. And so what we were able to do is we got a grant and we were able to send, people were able to pick up the craft projects at the library and do them at home with us via Zoom. And we were able to do craft projects each month online, or we were able to have a singer via Zoom online, and we were all able to gather online, which was not quite the same, but it was better than nothing. So that was our first step during the pandemic, was online via Zoom. Okay, let's go. And now we're back. We're back in person. And so this is just a copy of our brochure. And I just wanted to show this, and this is the flip side. And this is just to kind of show you the breadth of what the memory projects are doing in Waukesha County and the Bridges Library System. So we've got, can you go back? Thank you. So we've got the Wild Plum Project, which is ours, and we meet, like I said, we meet monthly, but then we also have the Lake Country Project. We have the Great Glacial River Project, the Purple Springs Project, the Running Waters Project, and then the Waukesha Project. So this is a very extensive community project. So we have memory cafes meeting throughout our counties, helping people with memory loss and dementia. And during the pandemic, we were all able to meet together. So how did we get together and how did the grant come into play? So we thought some people still aren't comfortable coming out. A lot of people are, they were so happy to be able to meet in person, but we thought some people still aren't. So Wild Plum requested and received a grant to purchase the Owl Pro to use at our cafes. And that was allowed us to provide the hybrid experience for those people who were not yet able to leave their homes. So the picture here is the owl with the wildlife in need, and she's holding up the snake. I should have warned you, if you don't like snakes, close your eyes. Too late, sorry. So she's holding the snake so that the people viewing from home are able to see the snake and all the animals that she brought. And it's a much better experience than we had prior when we were just doing it via Zoom, because the owl follows the speaker and follows who's ever talking for a much better experience for the people at home and also in person. We are also able to lend the owl to any of the members of the people in the Library Memory Project. So all those groups that you saw on the brochure, they can borrow the owl as well. So it's really helped us expand in terms of the hybrid opportunities for people that are not yet able to come out or are not yet comfortable. Or if the weather was like it was Tuesday, or here again, last night or today, they would be able to attend hybrid-wise as well, just from Wisconsin weather. The big thing with Memory Cafe and with this population is personal interaction. And that is such a large part of this. And this technology and this grant has made this piece of it such an important part. And this makes it possible for us to continue that personal interaction in another way, and really makes it a fuller experience for us to provide. So this is the Library Memory Project. And this is where all of our information is found. And this is, again, I'm Kathy. And if you have any questions, we are very proud of the work that we've done with the Library Memory Project. And I'm happy to answer any questions either now or later. If you have any, you can certainly contact me. I'd be happy to answer any. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. If you have a question, by all means, we have some time if you want to put that in the chat. I was curious, actually, Kathy, if you're often seeing a lot of how often are people going to more than one memory cafe in a week? Are you seeing a lot of, is there sort of a circuit?
Yes,
that's being done.
They go to all of. Some of them go to all of them, and they know each other from the different cafes, and they're in the choirs, and they go and they talk to each other, and they say, "Oh, are you going to the choir? Or are you going to the hiking thing? Or are you going So they're such a close-knit community that are going to all the different ones. So they're traveling all over to the different cafes. Yes, that is definitely happening. Yes.
What strikes me as so powerful about this experience is that there's so many layers to the community of practice. You have the librarians that are working together and kind of crowdsourcing your energy and expertise. Then you have the caregivers and those experiencing memory concerns that are building these communities. So it's really, really inspiring. Thanks for sharing that with us.
And I think, just to that point, I think what has been, to me, has been so, I didn't realize how much it was going to affect me and how it was going to touch me so much, helping work with this program and looking at the pictures and pulling the pictures, how many of that we've lost and, how many lives we've touched. And it's a very moving experience, but, we've really helped a lot of people, and that's been very fulfilling.
That's great. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you for letting me share the information.
Really appreciate it. We're going to shift now over to Vince Musell, who will be sharing, well, first of all, Vince is the Director of Library Services and Open RN Librarian at Chippewa Valley Technical College. And he'll be sharing with us a little bit more about 2 communities of practice that he's involved with that are designed around saving students money in the classroom. So Vince, take it away.
Thanks for the introduction, Jennifer. Appreciate it. Yeah, so today I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple communities of practice, and that is the Wisconsin Technical College System OER Network and the Community for Open Wisconsin. So these organizations basically surround open educational resources, and open educational resources, or OER, are any free teaching and learning resources that are openly licensed or available in the public domain. And we like to use them in place of traditional purchase course textbooks, which can be very expensive. So on average, students at my institution spend about $1,500 over the course of their 2 years, which is really a whole nother semester of tuition if you think about it. So these 2 groups kind of worked to support this movement towards more open and affordable resources. And I'll talk more about them in just one second here. All right. Yeah, so the WTCS OER network is a collaboration of the 16 Wisconsin technical colleges to advance OER. So this is supported and led by the state. So the WTCS system office is state of Wisconsin run, but each of the technical colleges is governed by a local board. So we're not state entities, we're just considered local government. And in this group, we do a lot of sharing of professional development opportunities. We form these faculty work groups that work together. Maybe they're creating a different resource or a new resource from the different institutions. And then we share resources that are already out there, as well as potential funding opportunities. Participation by all members is voluntary, so it's not something that you have to pay for or that you're mandated or required to be on. It's all voluntary. And really, it's there's quite a variety of individuals that participate in it. So libraries and librarians, of course, are at the forefront, because when it comes to finding the information, making sure they're credible and authoritative, that's why we're at the front of it. But we also have a lot of educators, faculty, instructional designers, technologists, etc., that are involved with this group. So some examples of some of the activities, specific examples of the OER network is OER advocacy. They want to make sure that this is known and share the good word. So a few examples of that are OER 101. It's a free online course, basically explaining the who, what, where, when, why, and how of OER. And that's offered multiple times a year, free of charge. We also have the WTCS OER Symposium. We just had our inaugural event last October, and we're going to have our next event this coming fall. And then a smaller example is in May, members of the group are going to be talking about they're going to be talking about OER to the Wisconsin Correctional Education Association. We also have some work groups that are basically composed of these members, and that is one example is medical terminology. Basically, they're trying to create this medical terminology book as a larger WTCS organization. So they're actually just finishing up on this title that's going to be used in Wisconsin colleges to reduce costs. And a similar project is OpenRN, or Open Resources for Nursing, where they're developing 5 open textbooks in the nursing field, which will eventually save students. I think it's $1.5 million. So members of the OER network are working together on these types of projects. We also work together for funding opportunities. So for example, this group has been instrumental in kind of reworking some of the state grants that are already existing to include provisions to develop OER. So for example, if you need funding to start something or to find staff to coordinate a project, these type of grants can now work to support that. We also share other related grants and funding streams. So it might be local, regional, state, or even federal grants. And then some of these members also work with the WTCS student government. So just on Monday, they actually had a annual student government meeting where they share their position with Wisconsin legislature, and their #1 position this year is OER, advancing OER, and they asked in the next biennium budget for $1 million. So great news on that front. We also share a directory of OER. So any resources that are already being used in classes or courses are kind of shared in this directory, where it then links out to the actual resource, so faculty can share that easier. And then we also do a lot of sharing of best practices. So for example, next month in March, we have a webinar on copyright and best practices in fair use and open educational resources. I think it's going to be a lot more exciting than it sounds. So now we're talking about the Community for Open Wisconsin, and this group is really dedicated to helping learners accomplish their educational goals while minimizing their cost burdens. I guess I'd like to mention that originally this group was kind of a grassroots group, got some great ideas. Then we applied for one of the WiLS Ideas to Action funds and were awarded, I think in 2018, to help us get our feet off the ground. So this group, the scope includes K-12, technical and community colleges in Wisconsin, the UW system, private colleges, and even public libraries as partners. For this group as well, membership is free for anyone, and it includes the similar stakeholders to the OER network, and that is librarians, technologists, K-12 educators, etc. We have 2 member meetings annually in the fall and the spring, and as I mentioned, it's funded by Ideas to Action. So some examples of COW activities. We do a lot of collaboration, and we like to share project and funding opportunities. So one of the grants that was recently awarded, it was a huge $2.5 million grant, was shared by the Community for Open Wisconsin, and we supported one another to kind of write for that grant. We also try to provide updates on projects from various institutions, and we do this to avoid duplication. So for example, if a university is working on creating a new free resource, let's say in health, we don't want to duplicate that in the technical college system. So we want to make sure that we're on the same page with projects. And then we also share learning opportunities similar to the ones that I mentioned earlier, but on a different scope, such as the Affordability Summit hosted by UW Stode, the OER Symposium for WTCS, etc. So I just wanted to break this down in case there was any confusion about the separate communities. So COW is sustained by volunteers, while WTCS OER Network is sustained by staffing. So there's funding to support that. Membership is open to Wisconsin libraries and educators for COW, whereas WTCS OER Network is just employees of the group. And then as far as professional development, both groups share that, but really it's COW is related to all institutions, while again, WTCS is related specifically to OER in that curriculum, in the curriculum areas. So both groups share best practices, funding opportunities, and then they both have this hardcore interest in advancing open ed. So they all work together that way. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the challenges, and specifically with COW, because COW is more of a volunteer-driven organization, whereas the network is, like I mentioned before, hard-funded. So COW started out with these huge aspirations, and there was a lot of excitement and energy, and it was great. But what we started to see is that we started too big, I think is where we ended up going. And then we ran into an issue of funding at the same time. So we had some great aspirations to do things like lobby for OER at a state level, maybe have a position, a centralized position for the state that supported the advancement of OER. But funding was a roadblock for us. And then right in the middle of that is when the pandemic hit us. And you know, it takes a long time for academic libraries, or I guess academic institutions in general, kind of move through that sort of, I guess, pandemic. So really it set us back a few notches. In COW also, because it was such a large organization with many diverse stakeholders, there was many different agendas. So something like the UW, let's say UW Eau Claire had a different agenda than Chippewa Valley Technical College, or their faculty might be much more slower moving because they have research entailed, whereas my institution might be a little quicker because our teachers are strictly teachers, not researchers. But there's also some opportunities for this. I did some screenshots up here of some recent cost savings for students. And this again spans different stakeholders. You see UW Stout up here. A lot of them are moving towards digital. And then Lakeshore and CVTC both hit the $1 million mark for saving students money. And then you can see at the bottom right, Milwaukee's cost savings. And I guess it's also important to mention here that not only are we saving students money, we're also increasing flexibility for our faculty. We're promoting equity by providing day one access to students. And then also we're seeing a lot of positive results with this OER. So for example, more students who take classes with OER tend to be more successful in those classes by the nature of the resources that are being used. So I wanted to share these resources. I see Andy posted a link to COW there. We also have a webpage for the WTCS OER network. It's just about open educational resources. If you're interested in learning more about OER, you can take the OER 101 course, which is free. I do encourage public librarians to take that course as well. It kind of keeps you on the same page as us and also helps you if you have students come in by you. And then if you're really interested in learning more about OER, I provided a bibliography for you. And that's all I have today. If you have questions or need anything, even anytime, feel free to message me and I'm happy to talk about OER or communities of practice in general. So thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Vince. You'll notice that Andy, in addition to the COW link, also posted in the chat that we will be sharing these slides out after the meeting. So obviously all those links will be available to you. If you do have any questions for Vince, I'll wait a moment if you want to throw that in the chat to kind of seed the questions here. I'll just ask the first one. You mentioned, Vince, the challenges that the COW group had in terms of starting too big, maybe too fast. Can you share at all what direction you think COW will be kind of heading now that might be more manageable? What are sort of those first priorities that you think the group will be able to focus on?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I guess I'd like to start out by saying, I think the aspirations are still there, the initial aspirations that we had, some of the things that I talked about. But I think setting the standards lower for us has been helpful. So instead of going hardcore to the ground on this, we're trying to just do this community where we work together and bounce ideas off of each other and share resources. So we went from having regular monthly meetings and then a steering committee and so forth to just a couple meetings a year and then maybe sharing out professional learning after that. That doesn't mean that conversations aren't going to happen where we say, hey, let's get together and try to make more happen. I think it's just doing that naturally versus more, I want to say forced or more strategically, let's put it that way. So natural conversations we think will be more helpful for this effort.
Yeah, I think that, as I think about what you just shared, and Kathy, certainly an underpinning of these communities of practice is that shared learning, that shared knowledge. And that's not something to take for granted or overlook, that there's power in that. And sometimes it is about getting together to do a thing, but that shared learning is a thing, right? That is what's important, is having the time and space and shared interests that can often help everyone advance in their understanding and gaining knowledge. So maybe a lesson here is that we should be really satisfied in communities of practice that maybe just focus on that shared learning.
Exactly. That's a great point.
Well, Vince is certainly available after the meeting. If you have time to think this over and you have some questions, I'm sure he'd be happy to talk with you one-on-one. And so thank you, Vince. We will move on then to our next speaker. Actually, the next two speakers, what they have in common is that these are both communities of practice that WiLS is proud to be a partner in. First, we have Melissa Prentice, Public Services Manager of the Mead Public Library, coming to us today as a member of the City Library Collective. This is a new collaborative we've brought together, a community of practice that brings together mid-sized libraries across Wisconsin to work together in some really interesting ways. So I will let Melissa share some of the lessons we've learned over this first year and how the CLC is impacting her work.
Thanks so much, Jennifer, and thanks everyone for being here today. I'm excited to talk to you about the City Library Collective and the importance of communities of practice for professional resilience. So I'll be sharing a little bit about the CLC origin story, and then some of the projects we're working on and the impact that this has had on my professional network. So the concept for the City Library Collective originated with a WAPL presentation by WiLS staff in 2019. That session was called A Big Picture Look at Library and Community Similarities and Differences Told Through Data. So for that presentation, WiLS staff took a very thorough look at DPI annual report data and found that it was pretty clear that mid-sized city libraries had unique needs and stories. And so WiLS staff then worked with Tasha Secker from Appleton Public Library after that presentation to start brainstorming ways that city libraries could come together to solve some of these shared problems rather than continually reinventing the wheel at the local level. So WiLS followed up on this idea with other library directors and started to develop and refine a model with 11 libraries that represent about 15% of the state's population. The group officially formed in April of last year, and these 11 libraries include the municipal libraries in Wisconsin serving population sizes from 30 to 100,000, and that includes the cities of Kenosha, Racine, Sheboygan, Manitowoc, Appleton, Oshkosh, Fond du Lac, Beloit, La Crosse, Eau Claire, and Superior. At our initial meeting last spring, we discussed a framework for the group's work process and decision-making practices and agreed to determine annual priorities based on member needs through consensus. And these priorities then become projects for us. The member libraries, with support from WiLS staff, drive the discovery and data and decision-making process. And given the timeline of the CLC's formation, we very quickly decided to focus our inaugural project efforts on the ARPA grant funding that was being administered through DPI. Our project, which is called Resiliency Preparedness, City Library Collective Supporting Communities in Crisis through Concepts of Whole Person Librarianship, was awarded $143,000 in funding through the ARPA grant. And we're really excited about this project. It will be promoting the model of whole person librarianship, which comes from this book. Let's see if you can see that. And in fact, we are working with the author to develop the training modules for that. And so we ideally want this to inform policy and practice in libraries with relevant concepts, training tools, and techniques from social work. And we are committed, the Library Collective is committed to developing these toolkits and training materials, sharing our processes and findings and other information with the wider Wisconsin library community in a manner that enables libraries across the state of differing sizes to scale social work concepts to fit the patron service needs in their communities. So we're really just starting to get that project rolling, and it's really exciting and I think can have a really powerful impact across the state. And so as exciting as that project is, I did also want to share some of the smaller, more organic developments that have come out of this community of practice and the impact it has had in fostering a sense of professional resilience. So for one, the group fills an important gap, I think, in the Wisconsin Library Committee landscape, in that the libraries in the City Library Collective are often islands in our immediate area, usually being significantly larger in size and staff, collections, scope of services than our neighboring libraries within our systems. So in that sense, the CLC really is a true community of peers in that priorities and projects are driven by the members and not external organizations or policy requirements, municipal or legislative requirements. And one way that WiLS is supporting our work is through hosting a project team on Basecamp. And the availability of that asynchronous communication tool has enabled some really great informal conversations and information sharing that happens outside of our official meetings. And those have really fantastic and great value and impact on my daily work. And some of the conversations we've had include, again, talking about that social work aligned staff position that some of us have in our libraries or are looking to develop and hire for, sharing our organizational charts, sharing job descriptions, discussing how our municipalities handle retiree health insurance, improving staff morale during these challenging times, effective approaches to building security along with exclusion and banning procedures, the nature and scope of library foundations and fundraising, book challenges, methods for data collection. And most recently, there's been some interest in connecting other staff members within our libraries that are in like positions. Again, some of these positions that maybe we don't see in our neighboring libraries, but do see within the City Library Collective. So IT specialists, business managers, marketing specialists, and again, that social work community resource person, so that those folks can also benefit from that information sharing and sort of troubleshooting within that community of practice. So we all know it's been a challenging couple of years for anyone working in a public service role. And the community of practice that the City Library Collective provides really helps build a professional resilience among library leaders through that collaborative work and information sharing. These interactions with colleagues across the state have been central to my own professional resilience through this changing landscape of the pandemic and other challenges we've faced in the last year. So I really look forward to seeing how the group develops and participating in these exciting projects, and that, especially that ARPA project, that help other libraries in the state build on that resilience as well. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Thanks, Melissa. If you have a question, by all means, that chat is waiting for you. You know, I do want to know, and you know, by all means, you don't have to have all the answers here for this, but can you describe if you had to, since this has been a newly emerging community of practice, we've both sort of seen it really coming into its own, taking shape. Can you list what you might think are some of the elements that have either been helpful in building that community, or looking back now at the last year, any lessons learned on sort of how you get, a group of individuals together who really for in this case really only had in common sort of demographics, right? Sort of libraries of similar sizes. But were there any, can you point out what sort of are the ingredients that make for a strong community of practice?
So I think that what's been powerful about this group really is, and it's sort of the secret sauce, right? Is that everyone, it seems, has been willing to engage and participate. So, you can build the tools and you can have the suggestions, but if you don't have that spark where people want to engage, then nothing's going to happen. I do think that probably having that, the ARPA grant as that thing that kind of gelled everything together right from the start really helped. And that helped get us the sort of flow of communication going. And then because that grant really touches so many aspects of the work that we do in our libraries, I think it really started getting us thinking about all of the other things that are happening, that we're facing challenges because of. So those conversations became sort of organic as a result. And I think we all are, looking to each other to see what we're doing. As I said, it's been a rough couple of years. And it makes it easier when we can kind of lean on each other and know that we're all kind of grappling with these questions and issues, and we can come together to find solutions.
Yeah, from that outside perspective, it has been really inspiring to see the camaraderie of the group developing. And certainly, I think that is sparked by that shared experience, right? That you all are kind of going through similar things, and it's nice to have that network to bounce ideas off of, and just to take solace in knowing that others are kind of in the same boat.
Definitely.
Well, thank you so much, Melissa. I think everyone's doing such a wonderful job in the presentations that there's no question left unanswered. You're answering it as we go along. So by all means, though, Melissa's available afterwards if you have questions. So we'll move on then to our last member speaker today. And as I mentioned when I was introducing Melissa, Jim is here to talk about a project that WiLS has played a role in, and we've really enjoyed seeing this community of practice growing and taking shape and really thriving. Jim is president of the Manitowish Waters Historical Society. As some of you may know, WiLS doesn't just work with libraries. We have numerous initiatives and services designed for our friends in the cultural heritage and preservation business. So we're thrilled to have Jim here to share his experiences with a project called the Digital Readiness Community of Practice. So I will pass it off to you, Jim.
Well, thanks so much. And I appreciate being here. And just a little background for me. I'm a retired educator. I taught history in the high school for 34 years in Wisconsin. Did my master's thesis in the electric flammable band of the Ojibwe and their traditional canoe routes and villages. And that basically has led to a 35-year passion for discovering history in northern Wisconsin. Manitowish Waters, we're a small town. We're under 600 people, and we work closely with the library. Kohler Library is our anchor, and I'm going to speak about libraries through the lens of a historical society a great deal. And I'm hoping at the close of this, those of you who are librarians might think that some of these smaller historical societies need an on-ramp like Recollection Wisconsin to get their collections of best practices into the 21st century. So how about the next slide and we'll just get going. All right. Communities of practices in Manitowish Waters benefit all community members. We do not have a museum. We work exclusively through our library, okay? We're very small. We started in November of 2015, but we are nimble. And in a community of 500, but with a lot of tourists, we have 200 members. That all came during the pandemic. If you look to the left, you see a picture of me with my mask on and gloves on and all of our folks. These are pontoon tours that we do, and the social distancing for that was absolutely amazing. And that came out of the best practices for the pandemic. The middle picture, YouTube, we were taking YouTube videos that had been in our library from VHS and DVD and putting them out on YouTube, and folks were just ecstatic to be able to get those and access them during the pandemic. And on the right, again, we're outside. We created an interactive trail with a huge partnership. So we're speaking of public history that's advanced through partnerships, innovation, and collaboration. So we're going to try to raise all boats with that kind of a tide. So Kohler Library, as you see on the left, is where we are housed, where we run our meetings, and we are so thankful and grateful. But we don't spend a lot of money on maintenance, buildings, and so on. And the library is absolutely awesome. If you look at the lower right-hand corner, that monitor in the back is part of a digital lab that we can turn slides, VHS, DVDs into YouTube videos or slides for others. Our mothership computer is for Past Perfect, is held right in the library. So it's, you know, their space, their internet, and, you know, we work with them. And all of our Past Perfect records, if you look at the upper right, they're online and they're absolutely free. And people are thrilled because when we started in 2015, we realized we had a 130-year backlog of photos that had not been properly documented with metadata. And we're chipping away at it, and it's created a lot of enthusiasm in the broader community. Next slide. So even at the library, it's almost like a museum. This is such a great connection between libraries and historical societies. The lower right, these are slides from those photos from Past Perfect that the library staff puts up. Janelle Cole runs the library, but Sarah Krems, who assists, is a real tech-savvy individual and has a great interest in history. Up above, these are two images that we found through researching. Kay Cron's one of our best researchers, that Electa Flambeau Ojibwa community gathering wild rice was actually painted in the 30s by a muralist named Francis Badger as part of the WPA art program. We worked with the library, again, another library, St. Charles Library down in Illinois. We paid the Historical Society to have those copies made. We have one for archive, one set on the wall, and then we paid for these really cool frames, and we share those out. It's this contagious enthusiasm of public history that really boosts the overall community. And to the left, you'll see a picture of Sarah Vance. She's one of the first female pioneer leaders in our community. She is an Ojibwa woman, and this was painted by Barbara McFarland, and Barbara donated to our Historical Society to sell. So even though we don't have a museum, we can work collaboratively within the library and the spaces with the talents of Sarah and Janelle, and it really moves things forward. Next slide, please. So we'll start on the far right again. So what we have in the upper right is just all the good work that is done at Kohler Library over the years in that digital lab. They have moved everything to DVD, all the interviews they did to capture history before we started in 2015. We wrote a grant last year, not a grant, we actually did fundraising last year to hire interns to turn all of those into YouTube videos. So The library preserved it initially, but then we paid the money as a collaborative partner to make sure those are all online, and they are absolutely a great hit and a great archival resource. Looking to the left, these innovative solutions, that silver box to the right are tour guide microphones. We do a lot of recreational history. Our public history gets out of the buildings, into the woods, and on the water. This allows me and another presenter to wear that lanyard transmitter over my neck, and then with that little earpiece to the right, everybody can hear me on a pontoon boat with the motor running, on a long hike, and alike. But to the left, this is what every library has. This is an LCD projector, but they're not all created equal. That LCD projector really has a lot of lumens, and we borrow it, and it expands our range in the community. But the library gives that to us. Next slide. So if you look on the left, that's a tavern and a restaurant, and it's called Anglers. It used to be the Tower Inn, and that space below it, I did a collaborative presentation with that LCD projector, and everybody could see it in the room. And in the middle of the pandemic, the Forest History Association of Wisconsin got the whole background on the development of rangers in the early part of Wisconsin's development. We then followed up with a hike afterward, but the LCD projector was the magic to make that happen. To the right, we also work with other businesses. That is the Manitowish Waters Athletic Club. It is a fabulous facility. We have started doing presentations there. At the lower right, you can see the lobby. MAC provides all sorts of food, snacks, and soft drinks, and we fill that place. And what is really great is I do a presentation there once or twice. I refine it out, get a feedback loop from the community. Then it's ready for a Zoom presentation. And ultimately that Zoom presentation ends up on YouTube. And right now on YouTube, we have over 70 videos out there. We had no videos out there before the pandemic. Next slide, please. But going along with the library theme, you know, we're a small town up here. We're pushing up against the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And Winchester Library is this delightful old school building you see in the upper right-hand corner, reached out to me and said, hey, Jim, why don't you do one of these YouTube screencasts for us on the history of Winchester so we could share it with our group? And I certainly did. It was about an hour, and Betty Foster worked very hard there. But Betty was the one who gave us the mothership computer for our Past Perfect. Do you see how we work together in our community of practice to bolster the understanding of public history? You can see all the other ones to the right of the highlights of Winchester history, other collaborations that I've done with businesses and community groups. This was a huge thrill, a real positive outcome. During that video actually was viewed by a Notre Dame employee who's a historian at the Land O'Lakes campus. And she told me about a Library of Congress book that is a fictional novel cast in northern Wisconsin called The King of Nobody's Island. We worked with the Library of Congress. At Winchester, they have now permission to print that book, and they're going through that process. And if you look to the right, I created a little video to help older people who don't know how to download PDFs to go out there and do that. If you look to the right, you'll see that we actually picked up 4 new subscribers, and we're up to about 160 subscribers in Manitowish Waters. So this is a multiplying effect that we have, and it also comes from our Facebook. When we post these things out, it was great. Next slide, please. Now, Mercer Public Library, again, another library that I work with very closely in this community of practice. We also collaborate with FE University. FE is Iron County. Iron County is the county right next to us. And these are adult level courses. I did a course where we did canoe trips and hikes for the Flambeau Trail, as you see in the lower left, from the red arrow from Lake Superior all the way to the area of Mercer. This was a massive, massive portage. But we also took folks out to walk right through downtown Mercer and show them where the route was and show them historic images in the upper right where the falls were, Superior Falls. It started this epic journey that moved all fur trade goods into the Lac du Flambeau area and furs out for centuries. Next slide, please. This inspired the one member of Mercer to create this flyer in which they explained the importance of the Turtle Portage Band, the Flambeau Trail, and created a walking map. This was all part, again, of a community practice of collaboration using tech. And Teresa Schmidt at the Mercer Library was instrumental in not only the class running, but the production of this final product. Next slide, please. Then we did a really big project with the DNR, Mercer Public Library on the right, Manitouche Waters on the left. You see the yellow arrows, but we have Mecca Trails that mow the trails, the DNR, Wisconsin Historical Society, ICOR, which is an outdoor recreation enthusiast. They have the land use agreement, Forest History Association, and Pioneer Park CCC camp. We have 22 signs out along an old CCC camp, and it is absolutely phenomenal. And again, Teresa at Mercer is leading ICOR, but she's also running the website. I did the research and the production of the sign and shared funds in supporting this project. Another community of practice. Boulder Junction, the other library right next to us, Sherry Sanderson. I did a presentation there outside under a pavilion. What did I have at that point? It was that LCD projector with full light in the evening, and it worked. And I got that from Kohler Library in Manitouche Waters. And currently on the right, we're doing a sign project with the DNR along Big Trout Lake, telling stories, again, collaborating with our local libraries to get key resources and make those community connections. Next slide, please. The greatest partner, without a doubt, is the North Lakeland Discovery Center. We have modern facilities in the lower left that we can use. We also fundraise it. The Manitouche Waters Historical Society paid for 2/3 of that pontoon boat, a 26-foot weir pontoon boat with a 115 Yamaha on it. And that's our most popular activity. But we also do trail hikes that you see below. North Lakeland Discovery Center enrolls the people in this, puts it all together, and it is a fabulous, fabulous partnership that we enjoy. We also do these trips. On the far right, we're also exploring a museum opportunity, and that is an example of a forest history museum that we're looking at as well. Next slide, please. So back to the library. At the library, look at that copier there. We can scan, we can make copies, and so on. Using PowerPoint in the upper right, we put together the binders that are in the laps of folks in the pontoon boats and along on our hikes so they can follow along. To the right of that is the innovation with technology. I want to move from those binders to tablets so people can go through and put those PowerPoints as PDFs online. And again, I can't thank Janelle and Sarah enough, as well as the whole board at Kohler Library, for making that shared experience happen. Next slide, please. So we do over 50 pontoon tours each year. They fill immediately, and there's actually a waiting list. You can see Manitouche Island on the left. This is Blue Bayou Restaurant. We work with the businesses there, and we actually do food trips with them as well. And we have those great communicators in the middle upper area so people can hear it and they can see all the visuals. On the right, you can see us leaving my house on Alder Lake with K-Crons talking to a group. This practice has probably been the most popular and is our identity as a group within the community. People are really impressed by that, and it resonates in the community. Next slide. And then, of course, when we do our hikes, the one on the right is in an old growth area in Plum Lake Hemlocks. The one on the left is over old railroad grades around Partridge Lake. We take people in the woods and we share the history, the documents, and then we teach along with a naturalist from the North Lakeland Discovery Center, again, with the tech and innovation of the transmitter and the earpieces. So we integrate very much with libraries, and it is an important part of who we are, and we have no building or anything like that. Go to my last slide, please. But I have to say, the biggest deliverer for us is the Wisconsin Historical Society. The resources that they have, the images, the stories, the guidance. I leave you with a sunset picture off of Six Paws Portage, one of our hikes over a black spruce swamp with a big glacial cane sticking out with red pines on it. Thank you.
Wow, Jim. You said you've only been doing this since 2015?
November of 2015.
That's an incredible amount of work and partnerships. I think something that much of what you said that struck me is the number of partners that you're working with. And I assume that takes an incredible amount of coordination. Are you responsible for that part, or how does that all come together?
We knew from the beginning we needed to collaborate to be successful, and that we weren't going to have a building, and we were going to work with our community partners and surrounding communities. And that really took, and we got our feet under us pretty well. When the pandemic hit, our outside activities, our Zoom activities, our digital activities, I saw somebody asked, how'd you get 200 members? That's how we did it. People started to come in and be part of this. We put a newsletter out 3 times a year. We give it to everybody for free. We give almost everything away for free except for the tours because of expenses. But folks appreciate that, and they love our community. And we really champion historic preservation. And I can tell you sad stories where, we lost some things that we wanted to keep. So we really have a sense of urgency, and there's an excitement of sharing. And as people were locked down in the pandemic, I mean, they bought in. That's pretty much what happened. We did that fundraising. One of the things we did, anybody who gave us money for our fundraising event, we made them members for a year. Now, before we did that, our membership was probably about 120. And so we expanded our reach, and we're using more social media. The bounce from social media as far as a community practice, I mean, I'm 63 years old. I can make web pages and YouTube videos and screencasts, but I don't understand social media. But I can tell you, the guy who runs it for us, when he uses it, it has exponential outcomes. And that, again, is a team approach to what we do. And we're not running a building, we're preserving history through a community of practice of collaboration and partnering.
That's great, Jim. I think you're also you're being very humble and not mentioning the fact that sometimes one of the ingredients in a community of practice is an individual with a whole lot of passion and the ability to bring people together. And clearly you're that person. So that's really inspiring for all of us. Any other questions for Jim? And I know, Jim, you have to leave. You're heading on a road trip. So we send you off with wishes of safe travels, and your contact information, I think, is here. So if people have questions, they are welcome to contact you offline.
Sure. And I just, again, understand that libraries and the faculty in this state need to create an on-ramp for struggling historical societies who can't get into the 21st century. So if you're doing that work, you're doing good work in my eyes, and I want to thank you.
Good thing to leave us with. They're
Right.
Good partners for us to explore. Thanks so much,
Right.
Jim.
Right.
Well, again, thank you so much to all of our member speakers today for taking the time to share your stories. We hope that you are all of you listening in are jotting down lots of ideas, and hopefully this is inspiring you to work on some partnerships or communities of practice in your own neck of the woods. Now I will turn things over to Jeff Bruner, who's been hard at work in the behind the scenes, collating the responses from our poll at the beginning of the meeting. If you didn't have time joining the meeting, there's still time probably to throw something in the chat, although it might throw Jeff off a bit here. But the question being, if you could if you could invent a community of practice or collaboration around any topic, what would it be? I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, I would encourage folks to jump in, add your thoughts, because we only had a few responses at the beginning of our session. So if you've got ideas, if you could invent a community of practice or a collaboration around a topic, what would that topic be? What would you like to see more collaboration about? We had a couple of responses at the beginning of the session. I will say that I love this kind of thing. That the theme of our early responses was, what would you invent a community of practice about? Community. We had comments about passive programming, those kinds of things that you do in your library that might bring people in, that's not necessarily a scheduled program, but an activity or something that your community members might want to come in for, as a way to drive that kind of in-person connection, which has been so lacking these last couple of years. And we also had another meeting attendee say that they'd like to see a community of practice built up around the work and the processes and best practices of community building, of community partnerships is the term, I think it was from Tasha, that came into the chat as a kind of an alternative viewpoint to the idea of outreach. So how do you build up those collaborations with other members of the community? What successes have you had? So a community of practice about that, I think, seems great. Here in the chat, I see a new message about cataloging, metadating, supporting non-English speakers, display creators. I think there are infinite things that everybody on this call and everybody watching the recording, everybody working in WiLS member institutions has some kind of expertise or some kind of a passion, something that they're really good at. And we would love to see more of this kind of brainstorming, this kind of collaborative work to share that expertise. I guess that's what WiLS is all about. I know that it is my responsibility to hand this off to the next person. I am mortified to say I can't remember who that is. Can somebody else? Okay, oh, great, that helps.
Yep.
So,
Thanks so much, Jeff.
I'll pass it back to Jen.
Thanks, Jeff. And I think really early in the meeting, we also had someone with the simple suggestion of joy, a community of practice around joy. And wouldn't that be wonderful, especially in the world we're in right now? I think we can think of lots of ways we could benefit from joy and happiness and peace, being a community of practice we all are members of. So thank you. Well, it wouldn't be a member meeting if we didn't talk a little bit about what WiLS has been up to. So now's the time when we get to share a few highlights of what's happening in the WiLS office, so to speak. We don't want to keep you here for hours on end, so we're just going to share some highlights of the past year. We're going to continue to ride this theme of communities of practice. We have a penchant for themes here in WiLS. We like that. And so you're going to hear about how some of our WiLS work intersects with a variety of networks aiming to get stuff done in groups. That's what we've been talking about. So I will pass the baton to Laura Damon-Moore of our consulting team, and she's going to share about one of our newer collaborations with public libraries focused on community engagement. Laura?
Thanks so much, Jen. Yeah, and hello, everyone. It is so great to be here with all of you today. So a fun new project that WiLS has been helping to pilot this year is in collaboration with the American Library Association's Libraries Transforming Communities program. So my colleague, Kristen Whitson, and I are co-convening one of 3 regional hubs. So basically communities of practice made up of small and rural library administrators who are all working on different projects related to community engagement. We have a mailing list of about 60 or so libraries from Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, Indiana, and Wisconsin in what we call our Upper Midwest Hub. And we meet monthly with these folks to share project progress and chat about what's working and where are the sticking points related to community engagement, particularly during a time when political and social tensions are heightened in many communities. People are tackling topics ranging from social justice movements to food insecurity, to community mental health, to community-driven strategic planning. So it has just been so fun and eye-opening for Kristen and myself to connect with other people in and outside of Wisconsin, both at the convener level and with ALA, and with the libraries on the ground that we've been able to make connections to. And now I'm actually going to pass it to, speaking of Kristen, I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Kristen. She'll be sharing about the digital readiness community of practice that Jim mentioned earlier. So thank you all so much.
Thanks, Laura, and it's been a delight to work on the ALA Libraries Transforming Communities project with you. So another great community of practice that we've been cultivating over the last few years, but particularly in 2021, is the digital readiness community of practice. Yep, and we can go to the next slide, perfect. Which is how we got in touch with Jim Bokern, who was our last guest speaker earlier. So over at Recollection Wisconsin, which is one of the consortia that is managed by WiLS, we've been hearing for a long time that local history practitioners engaged in digital projects want a community of peers who are doing similar work to turn to. And local history practitioners are those who work or volunteer in small historical societies, house museums, and as many of you may know, public libraries with local history collections. So we asked this community of local history practitioners to help us develop 4 digital readiness fairs, which you may have heard about last summer, and a statewide workshop, which we held last fall. All of them were held virtually. Each fair included plenty of time for attendees to connect with each other, which is something that I think we've heard a lot about from the speakers today, and we've heard in just about every community of practice setting that the participants really want to be able to talk to each other as much as they can. The rest of each of our 4-hour fair events were filled with information about Recollection Wisconsin, the training and support we can provide, guest experts on topics as varied as copyright research or scanning specifications, collaboration and outreach suggestions, which is what Jim was one of our speakers for. Youth volunteers in historical societies was a particularly popular topic. Those events drew 269 attendees from 121 different organizations. Thanks to the virtual nature of these events, we were able to host attendees from as far away as California, which was really fun. The community gatherings proved to be fertile ground for people to form relationships, ask questions, get ideas, and give advice to their peers. We hosted volunteer historians, professional archivists, and everything in between, which is great because we were really aiming for an inclusive, accessible sense of community. So this community of practice continued to flourish as Emily Fotenhauer, Vicki Tobias, and I expanded existing documentation on how exactly to go about planning, performing, and maintaining digital projects. So what we're calling the Digital Readiness Toolkit has been developed and written in conversation with this community of practice. Each step from brainstorming to outlining to writing to reviewing has all been in partnership with digital projects practitioners. So for example, right now that toolkit is out for beta testing with several partners using the toolkit as they go about their digital projects. And we're looking forward to publishing the final version later this spring. You'll hear more about it in next year's annual member meeting, I'm sure. It's such a privilege to watch these groups of practitioners inspire, support, and engage with each other. The expertise in the community supplements and motivates us and each other, and we're really glad to provide the forum for those connections to bear fruit. So that's it from me, and next I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Sarah Gold to talk about new business development.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Excuse me. I'm Sarah Gold, and I'm going to be talking about new business development in regards to the cooperative program. So an exciting addition to the cooperative purchasing program is the role of business development. The co-op purchasing program is a unique service for WiLS in several ways. First of all, it serves the entire breadth of the community, from schools and universities to special and public libraries. Bringing on resources to the co-op program is a vital part of the service, and this new business development allows us to proactively seek out new vendors, new types of resources, new purchasing opportunities at both the state and system level. Some recent opportunities include organizing group purchases for public library members of streaming video products such as Canopy and Access Video on Demand. In addition to new model for our public library members that will allow them more flexibility for electronic resource subscription management, including subscriptions they have previously subscribed to directly. Excuse me. So we look forward to continuing to enhance of my WiLS membership for all of our members. And to learn more about the membership, you can email the co-op team at coop@wils.org. And that is it for me. I am going to turn it over to Kim Kieswetter to have some highlights from the research and data services that she has been working on this year. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Good morning. I think I've had the opportunity now that I've been at WiLS for 2 years to meet most of you. I've been working as part of the consulting team, and over the last year, we've been able to continue to expand the type of research and data-oriented projects that we're able to offer our partners, which has been very enriching and exciting for me. In 2021, the consulting team took on a number of new ventures in that realm. And I'll just offer a few examples of what we've been up to. So these included continuing to hone the types of data that we offer our strategic planning partners, which remains kind of the bread and butter of what we do over at consulting. And this includes helping to dashboard annual report data and continuing to develop statistically sound comparison cohorts for public libraries to be able to benchmark their data against for meaningful analysis in support of strategic decision making. We have been able to offer expanded data-oriented services, including doing more survey research projects. So over the last year, this included conducting a digital services survey for a library system to help assist in making purchasing decisions, as well as conducting a community survey that was in support of a building expansion plan and the potential of an associated referendum. We've also been partnering with the Department of Public Instruction, DPI, on larger scale research, evaluation, and data-driven projects that have been really exciting too. In mid-2021, the consulting team began a year-long project evaluating the current 5-year LSTA plan for the state, and that transitioned into helping to draft the new 5-year plan, which is underway with my colleagues, Melissa and Laura. And in addition, we are also managing, as many of you probably know, the 2021 annual report data collection process for the state and cleaning up and certifying previous year's PLS data with IMLS for the state as well. So we're really looking forward in 2022 to continuing this trend and already have some other statewide data-oriented projects in the hopper, including a data landscape research project, which will help assess where librarians are at currently in their data confidence and offer tailored recommendations and strategies for helping library staff take data use out of the more hypothetical and philosophical and into actual meaningful real world implementation based on where library staff are at and what they feel they need in order to be supported and successful in using data to support their work, something that I'm very passionate about. So I am now going to pass the baton back to our fearless leader, Jen.
Thanks, Kim. So I'm just going to throw in the chat a link to our annual report. Clearly, we only touched on a tiny fraction of what we've been up to in the last year. And so if you are leaving this meeting wanting to know more, I really urge you to go to that annual report. It is as beautifully done as this member meeting. And so it will be a delight, I think, for you to look through, and I encourage you to do so. So thanks to all of my fellow colleagues for sharing with you today. If anyone has questions for any WiLS staff, those who spoke today or beyond, by all means, reach out to one of us. The WiLS door is always open, and so feel free to reach out to us at any time. Oh, and my screen decided to do something very strange. Hold on one second. Let's see if I can get my other screen working here. There we go. Oh, technology. Okay, so we have been spending the last hour and a half or so thinking a lot about how 2021 turned out. And it would be obvious at this point in the meeting for us to transition into talking about the coming year. But for a moment, I'm going to ask us to take an even further look back. And we're going to be talking about 50 years ago, because this year is WiLS's 50th anniversary. It's our birthday, and we are excited. I want to think about, thanks, Cheryl. I want to think about, let's all go back to 1972. So, right, it was a pretty remarkable year, or I should say it was far out. Can you dig it? Amazing music was released. So think Lean on Me by Bill Withers, Papa Was a Rolling Stone by the Temptations, Heart of Gold by Neil Young, and I'll Take You There by the Staple Sisters. The first women were allowed to compete in the Boston Marathon, and Bobby Fischer became the first American chess champion. It was a year filled with tragedy and strife. The start of the Watergate scandal, Bloody Friday in Belfast, and anti-war demonstrations across the US. It's just amazing to think about how some things change and some things stay the same. So this is the backdrop against which WiLS was born. 50 years ago, a group of librarians under the name of the Council of Wisconsin Libraries, or COWL, they launched their first direct service venture, and they dubbed it the Wisconsin Interlibrary Loan Service. Operating out of Memorial Library on the UW-Madison campus, WiLS provided access to the extensive resources available in the Madison campus library collections. WiLS began with 2 employees, 4 student assistants, a budget of $45,000, and 46 participating libraries. So we've grown a smidge since then. It was COWL's intent to develop additional service programs in the future, and they wanted to brand the WiLS pathway for doing more collective work. See, even back then, we knew the power of communities working together. I think COWL would be pretty happy with how things have turned out. So plainly put, it's our 50th birthday and we are in the mood to party. So we're going to be cooking up some fun. We plan to spend the time between the spring Waffle and Wall conferences through the fall WLA conference as sort of our birthday season. And we're going to be commemorating the half century of WiLS work. So be on the lookout in the WiLS Chronicle or the @WiLS newsletter for more information on activities and giveaways we have planned. Like most things after 50 years, think wine, maybe a seasoned cast iron skillet, Robert Plant, whatever. We like to think we've gotten better with age. We've come a long way from those early interlibrary loan days, and we're excited to see what the next 50 years has in store for us. So I will talk about the year ahead. We're taking advantage of this milestone to take stock of our own organization's goals, vision, and our trajectory. We are in the midst of engaging in our own strategic planning process, and we aim to have a plan in place by the summer to help guide us for the next 3 to 5 years. This planning process will be the backdrop of much of our work in the year ahead, years ahead, and we'll also be spending time, obviously, continuing to build and grow our signature services. Something else to be excited about and look for in the very, very near future is a brand new WiLS website. And this has been a huge project in the making, as any of you who have designed or redesigned your website know. And I want to give a shout out to Andy Coffin, our communications specialist. Andy, would you turn your video on? Maybe I'm catching you off guard. There you are. She has put her heart and soul into this project, and I just want to say thank you to Andy. She takes the lead on designing all of our communications and graphics. She brings such a creative flair and natural ability to make things clear and delightful, and she just does an amazing job leading our communications team. So thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Also on the near horizon, we can go to the next slide, is save the date for our upcoming WiLS World Short. On March 25th at 1 p.m. We are welcoming Kristen Peekole from the Office of Intellectual Freedom at ALA. Some of you might think that name sounds familiar, and that's because Kristen was a Wisconsin librarian. She was the teen librarian at West Bend Community Memorial Library during their extensive book challenges that they had about a decade ago. So again, a little bit of history repeating itself, unfortunately, but we're happy to welcome Kristen, and we'll be sharing more details on her presentation very, very soon. So watch for that. So I think we have come to the end of our meeting time, and we have time for questions or comments. I see some people have been already throwing things in the chat, some celebrations. We can't wait to party with you all and celebrate our 50 years. Thank you so much for the kind words, Ellen, about things happening at WiLS. We're happy with where we are right now, and we're just thrilled to work with all of you. So any other questions or comments, by all means, throw them in the chat. And as you think on that, I will just thank again our community speakers at the beginning of the meeting. Thank you for putting time into sharing your experiences with all of us. I know we're all leaving this meeting knowing a little bit more and maybe feeling a little bit more inspired to go out and work with our colleagues and partners on the next big thing. So thanks. Okay, well, you know where to find us, so thank you. And have a great rest of your day. I hope the sun is shining where you are. Thanks for spending your Friday morning with us. If we don't see you before next year, don't forget to save the date, always the last Friday in February. We love this opportunity to talk with you. Thank you so much.